Department of Health and Environment has announced that we now have 2,025 confirmed positive cases of COVID-19. That is up 39 from yesterday. Still 69 out of 105 counties, and at this point 107 Kansans have died. That is up 7 from yesterday. Today, KDHE also announced that it has expanded the criteria for testing individuals who are suspected to have COVID-19. Previously, a person was required to have a temperature and 2 or more symptoms to get tested. As of today, individuals only need to have 2 symptoms to be tested. They no longer have to have a temperature. Our goal is to get more testing done quickly so that treatment can be initiated earlier and that contact tracing can be more efficient. We also have encouraging news to share this morning from the Department of Labor. The agency has successfully completed the implementation of expansion of benefits from 16 to 26 weeks, which had been approved by the state legislature before they adjourned. The extension will apply automatically. No application or process is required other than to file the routine weekly claims. This applies to any application made on or after January 1st, 2020. With the implementation of the legislature's expansion of benefits to up to 26 weeks, Kansans will have the safety net needed to get through this crisis until our state's economy rebounds. Before I turn it over for questions, I'll speak briefly to the sobering news we received yesterday with the announcement that Kansas faces a projected $1.27 billion budget deficit over the next 2 fiscal years. Although it was news we've been bracing for since the coronavirus began disrupting our lives in early March, the reality is no less jaw-dropping. It goes without saying that incredibly difficult budget decisions loom in the weeks and months ahead. As I mentioned yesterday, I've already instructed state agencies to freeze non-COVID related hires and identify cost-saving steps that will help protect critical investments as much as possible. This week, I will sit down with my budget director to explore additional short-term options to manage state cash flow amid this uncertain fiscal climate. I will have more to share on this front once my budget director and I have had a chance to go over the numbers and do a deep dive on these projections, but we are cautiously optimistic that we may be able to make some strategic decisions that help offset painful cuts to critical services in the current fiscal year. And with that, I will take questions.
Governor, with kind of beating projections in previous months, having more kind of maybe a rainy day fund, how's that going to help if we are $1 billion less in the next year?
Well, as we came into the consensus revenue estimating process, we had about $900 million in our ending balance. So that obviously provides a nice cushion. It looks from the profiles that have been done that will end this fiscal year with about $200 million in the ending balance. It's next year that looks really bad. We lose about $650 million in revenue next year. With the carryover, the 200, that'll put us about $450 million behind.
Governor, is there any realistic scenario under which K-12 education won't be cut?
I can't really tell you that right now, but when I talk about critical services, I'm including education. So we will do everything in our power to avoid making cuts to those essential services.
You are the education governor.
I hope to remain so. But I am cautiously optimistic, but as I said, I'll know a whole lot more after Larry Campbell and I sit down later this week and go over the numbers deeply, and then decide where we've got some wiggle room, what we can do to cover some of the shortfalls.
You think Friday or something you can make some disclosures about steps that you're going to take?
I doubt it'll be as early as Friday, no. I mean, there are a lot of things to consider, and remember, there is a legislature I've got to deal with too, so I need to have some conversations with them because this is something we're going to have to work out together.
What is that language you used at the end? You said something about some strategic decisions to offset the reductions. I mean, what were you referring to there?
Well, you know, you've been around here, Jim, for a long time, and you know that there are ways that money can be moved around within the state system, and that's the kind of thing that we'll look at. You know, do we have money in one area that might be able to be shifted over here to fill a potential hole in another? So those are the kinds of things that we're going to be looking at.
Governor Kelly, do you think you're just going to let the surplus in the Treasury absorb the initial year hit, and then really put your emphasis on the next fiscal year as in terms of retrenchment and cuts and money shifting?
You know, those are decisions that have not been made yet. You know, we need to take a look. Obviously, I want to do it in as moderate manner as possible to offset any, you know, shock to the to somebody's system. So if there's a way of smoothing it out so that, you know, we take some of the hit, you know, in this fiscal year and then less of a hit than it looks right now in the next fiscal year, that would be good news. The other reality we have is, as you know, in Washington right now, they are talking about stimulus 3.5 and stimulus 4, and hopefully one of those packages will include some additional revenues for states to use to offset the budget shortfalls that I'm assuming we're all experiencing this. I haven't looked at every other state's budget yet, but my guess is that they're all going to be in pretty bad shape. I think I heard New York was $12 or $16 billion short.
Is there anything that is off limits for cuts if you need to make them? I mean, K-12 education is already referenced. Is there anything else?
I haven't put anything on the table or taken anything off the table right now. Really do need to take a look at the numbers.
Governor, the Associated Press in a question. When is the state projected to enter phase 1 of its plan to reopen and ease its stay-at-home orders, and does the state yet have a projection for getting to phase 2?
Okay, so we're talking about phase 1 of reopening our economy. I think, you know, if you all looked at the guidelines that came out of the White House last week, you know, it does clearly go into a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You know, we haven't gotten to phase 1 yet, which is having the testing available that we need to ensure that we can get those folks out of, get them into treatment and get them out of the general population, and then do the contact tracing. Those two items need to be solidly in place before we can actually think about opening the doors. We're working very hard, pushing our federal partners to get us, particularly the testing that we're going to need, and the Department of Health and Environment is beefing up our ability within our public health structure to do the contact tracing. So we can take responsibility for getting that portion in place, but we still really need help from the federal government to get the testing equipment that we need.
Is it your intention to tell Kansans, to apprise them of what your plans are by May 1st? Or will people know before then that the stay-at-home order hypothetically could be lifted May 8th or something like that? Will people know by the end of the month what's happening?
Yeah, we have already set May 3rd, midnight May 3rd, as the time when we would like to lift the statewide order on the entire state, then leaving in place the authority of the local counties' health departments to determine if they need to do something different. That's our goal, and we plan to have the phase 1 plan ready to announce next week before May 3rd. But as I've said every time, you know, there's no guarantee of the May 3rd with the stay-home order being lifted. That is the goal, and we're planning towards that date. But, you know, if the metrics are not in place, if the indicators are not in place, if the testing is not in place, the contact tracing is not in place, we may have to extend it.
What have you heard from business leaders and economists or medical, anyone like that, what they want to see in a phase 1?
We are working very closely with our business communities and with our public health officials. So in fact, I just on the phone for a long time this morning with public health officials from the big 5 counties and we're going over what the sort of medical health metrics need to look like. And I have calls in place with the business community, and we're actually, even before we get into that call, we're gathering information from them to see what will look like. I think, business is a generic term. There's all sorts of different industries. They all won't look alike. What guidelines we put in place for the hospitality industry may be very different than the guidelines that need to be put in place for retail. So
when you say you're reaching out to the business community, does that mean talking to like the Hospitality Association and the State Chamber? I mean, who are you talking to?
yeah, that's exactly. We're talking to the industry sectors. So you've got your agriculture industry here. We've got obviously aerospace industry here. We've got hospitality, tourism industry here. So we're looking at all those, and yes, we are talking with the chamber.
Governor, can you tell us a little bit about Department of Emergency Management working with the 4 counties that have meatpacking plant hotspots to potentially house non-infected people, maybe in hotels, maybe in college dorms? Can you tell us what you know about that?
I can tell you that that people in those areas don't need to be worried that we're going to be quarantining people in the general population, and that they're going to have to worry about coming in contact and being placed in harm's way. Can I tell you the exact location of those places? No, I really can't.
The sentiment is that evaluate resources like in closed colleges, maybe there's housing around community colleges, to see if they can assist in providing space for people to safely reside. That's the idea.
You can trust that we have had public health people on the ground in all of those communities, and that we have secured secure housing for folks who either test positive and don't need to be hospitalized, or have been part of the contact tracing and recognized as somebody who's been exposed. So we've got that under control, and I want to reassure people that we have some of the best folks on the ground right now, making sure that those items are in place should the need arise.
Later this week, I think there's supposed to be a few protesters around the Capitol, people who don't want to stay at home and obviously are expressing that view by not staying home. Have you had any communication from those folks about what exactly they want, what exactly they're asking you to do?
No, I haven't had any communication directly with any of those folks, but I, like everybody else, watch the news, and I've heard what folks in other states have said. I expect we'll be hearing very much the same sort of thing here. And and I really understand people are tired. This is frustrating to be cooped up. It is frustrating not to be able to go to work and not have a paycheck coming in. I really do understand the frustration, but we have to continue to act in the best interests of all Kansans and their health.
I have a question about contact tracing. It sounds really interesting. It's like spy work or something. But is KDHE trying to hire about 400 people to work on this project? As the economy reopens, you're going to need a large cadre of people who can do some of this work. Is that in the ballpark?
I think that there will be a variety of ways that we secure those 400 people, and I do believe that that's the number Secretary Norman mentioned last week. So it could be repurposing state employees, who are not able to come back into the workforce to do exactly what they were doing before. We might be able to repurpose some of them on a temporary basis. I believe he also talked about volunteers, that there are actually people out there who want to volunteer their services and would be able to do that. So if we can get to the 400 using those 2 resources, that's what we'll do. If not, then I would expect we'll need to go out and hire some folks.
Governor Conley, what reports are you getting from the Department of Labor? I mean, when can we say that they've turned their corner on the problems they were facing? And secondary question to that, do you have any information on when they're going to be ready to start sending out that additional $600 in federal benefits?
Yeah, I think that's coming very, very soon. They have said this week, and I think they're going to be able to hold to that. So as soon as we know when they'll be able to start sending those out, we'll let you know.
Governor, Auburn News would like to know, do you expect to have to amend the budget for the legislature by Monday? And also, is Medicaid expansion still in the works?
Well, I'm not going to be amending any budget by Monday, that's for sure. We'll be talking about it at length. And actually, I think the Ways and Means Committee and the House Appropriations Committee will be meeting by Zoom this week, later this week. They'll get the consensus revenue estimates. And I do have every intention of having conversations with legislative, particularly budget leadership, as we're going forward and figuring out how we're going to get through this fiscal year and go into the next one.
You would expect those committee meetings to be public, wouldn't you? Not closed meetings just to committee members, but public?
No, I think they're meeting by Zoom, and I know that they'll be available by audio like every committee meeting is. So, you know,
So
the
through
general
the
public,
legislature's website?
the general public can just go on to the legislative website, and they have that link there that will link them to the committee hearing. And I think their intention now, technology is technology, we'll see if it works, but the intention is to have
We
that
wouldn't want
public.
them meeting by themselves, talking about the state budget in a crisis, would we?
I never want them meeting by themselves discussing the budget, but no, I don't think they have any intention of doing that. I think they have every intention of making
If I
it
may
public.
stick to religion, please. I think there's a hearing Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, before the federal judge again, isn't it? Or was that last week? I was thinking that.
It's Thursday.
Okay, I was thinking that you wanted to continue to pursue that case. You said you wanted to continue to fight it. What kind of outcome are you looking for?
I'm really not going to comment much. You know, it is in court right now. We're just going to let's see what happens on Thursday.
Governor, can you provide the current status of the Department of Labor and how they're handling increased web traffic and the phone lines? Because we're told people are still having trouble accessing that.
They are still having trouble accessing that. It is better than it's been before, but you know, the volume continues to be very high. The system isn't any younger than I last mentioned, but so it's still a problem. But we have had some really sharp folks working on patching it the best they can to get us through this, and then we can go back to modernizing the system like we were attempting to do before this all hit.
One more question?
We're within 2 weeks to May 3rd. If we have not, if it's been proven we haven't hit our peak yet, would you have to extend it?
Yeah, that's one of the metrics we'll look at. You know, as you've seen from the materials that came out of the White House and every other group that's looked at it, is you really do need to see, you know, that you've plateaued and that the curve is bending down. That's what we'll be looking for. So, yeah, it's one of the things we'll look at. You know, I just announced today, 39 new cases. That is down from yesterday and down from the days before. So let's hope that's a trend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. If you